Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got quite a bit of material today sent in by you, our listener. Looks like some notes on habits and leadership, and another source focusing more on, time management priorities.
Yeah, and right away you can see these aren't like your typical quick fix guides. They seem to be digging deeper.
Definitely. So our goal here is to unpack these, pull out the really key insights for you, kind of a shortcut to understanding their take on living a more principle-centered life, improving relationships, that kind of thing, and leading with integrity.
It feels like they're pushing past just surface level stuff, aiming for principles that lead to more lasting change.
Exactly. So let's jump in. The sources seem to start by questioning how we usually think about being productive. They draw a pretty sharp line between two concepts.
They bring up this idea that traditional time management, well, it's often just focused on speed, efficiency, getting things done faster.
Right, the clock.
They call it the clock, yeah. How much can you possibly cram into a day?
And we all feel that, don't we? The emails, the lists, gotta optimize every second. But these sources are saying that focus, well, it misses something crucial.
It really does. It misses the whole question of direction. Like, where are you even trying to go? That's where they bring in the compass.
Ah, the compass.
Yeah, a principle-centered approach is more about effectiveness.
Yeah.
Making sure you're pointed in the right direction, doing the right things, not just doing things right.
And I think that resonates, that feeling of being incredibly busy, checking things off, but still feeling like you're not actually moving towards what really matters, what one source calls being caught in the thick of thin things.
That feeling. That's the gap between your clock and your compass.
Yeah.
And they argue pretty strongly that to fix that, you can't just react to the daily fires, the acute pain.
You have to go deeper.
Exactly. You have to look at the chronic underlying causes, which means, really engaging with these deeper ideas, these principles.
Okay, so that brings us to the foundation then. Principles and human nature. They talk about true north principles.
What are those exactly? Like universal laws?
Pretty much. Think of them like natural laws for effectiveness and quality of life. Fairness, integrity, dignity, things that just are whether we believe in them or not, like gravity.
Yeah.
And they're careful to say these aren't just values. Values are personal, subjective. I mean, as they point out, even criminals have values. Principles are more like external truth.
So like the law of the farm idea. You reap what you sow.
Yeah.
You can value a quick harvest, but the principle is that growth takes time and cultivation.
Precisely. And understanding these principles, well, it gives you a kind of stability, an anchor. If you get the principle of, say, trust, you can apply it everywhere. You're not just solving today's issue, you're equipped for tomorrow's unknowns.
That adaptability sounds key. They also bring in this idea of human nature having, 4 parts?
Yeah, the body, mind, heart, and spirit. And each has a corresponding basic need. To live, so physical well-being, to love, connection, to learn, our mental growth, and to leave a legacy, that sense of purpose or contribution.
And problems pop up when we ignore these needs or try to meet them in, flawed ways.
Exactly. Using flawed paradigms, the whole quick fix mentality is a great example.
Oh, no.
It promises shortcuts to feeling good or successful, but if those shortcuts aren't based on real principles like building actual trust or competence, it just creates an illusion. It doesn't really meet the need.
Got it. There was also something about self-transcendence.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. It's about shifting from just focusing on your own needs to living for something bigger than yourself, contributing.
Okay.
And the sources suggest this shift is fundamental to how you use your time.
Yeah.
Your needs, health, learning, relationships, they become resources for that higher purpose. Changes your whole perspective on priorities.
Okay, so we've got these external principles, the compass. We understand our basic needs, the call to contribute. But what about, the internal GPS?
That's where conscience comes in. They describe conscience as our inner connection. It links us to those universal principles, but also to our own unique potential. It's that quiet voice, especially when we're facing a choice.
There's that story in the sources, isn't there, about a really tense meeting.
Oh, yeah, where everything's gridlocked. And the speaker asks everyone to just pause, close their eyes, and listen to their conscience.
And apparently it worked.
Yeah, the idea is when you quiet the external noise, the internal truth, the principle-based answer often just emerges. It's not about popularity, it's that deeper sense of what's right.
And that ties right into integrity. They define integrity as being true to your values, your convictions, and crucially, to that conscience.
Right. And they even talk about integrity therapy, the idea that real peace of mind, psychological health, comes from living in line with your conscience.
There's that story of the executive. Wasn't he president of some association? Deeply depressed, physically unwell.
Yeah, because he was living a kind of double life, this dark part he hadn't faced.
Right. And when he finally broke it off, was honest with his wife, he found this incredible sense of peace. Not just relief, but like wholeness, self-honesty. It suggests that ignoring your conscience, it actually fragments you psychologically.
Wow, so integrity isn't just some abstract virtue, it's core to our well-being. But how do you build that? Sounds huge.
Well, they say it starts small, really small,
Mm.
just making and keeping commitments,
Mm.
especially to yourself.
Okay.
There's the example of the guy whose emotions were all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
totally dependent on circumstances.
Yeah.
He'd make promises when he felt good, then break them when things got tough or the feeling faded.
And each broken promise kind of chipped away at his self-trust.
Exactly. But by focusing on keeping tiny promises, getting up on time, doing one small task, he gradually stabilized. He was building his personal integrity account.
Like a muscle.
Yeah, you can't fake strength when the pressure's on.
Mm.
It's those consistent small acts that build the inner resilience you need for the big tough choices later.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Consistency builds capacity. This connects to what they called the mother of all virtues.
Humility, yeah. They say it's what makes all the other virtues possible. Because if you're humble, you're teachable. You know you don't have all the answers.
Right. Like that analogy about the circle of knowledge. As it gets bigger, the edge touching the unknown also gets bigger.
The more you genuinely know, the more you realize how much you don't know. It's humbling. The author shares that story about being told he wasn't ready for his dissertation, didn't know enough to even ask the right questions.
Ouch.
Yeah, or falling in the river and realizing his physical limits. Not fun, but those kinds of experiences forged the character needed later.
Okay, so with this foundation, principles, needs, conscience, integrity built small, humility. How do we actually apply this? How do we manage ourselves day to day?
Right. This leads straight into the quadrant 2 idea. They really hammer this. Focus your time and energy on what's important, but not urgent.
Quadrant 2, the quadrant of quality. Things like planning, preventing problems, building relationships, learning.
Exactly. All this stuff that's crucial for long-term effectiveness, but doesn't usually scream for attention right now. And the key insight is spending time here in quadrant 2 actually shrinks the crises, the urgent, important stuff.
Because you're preventing fires instead of just putting them out.
Precisely. It's proactive. It's leadership. Quadrant 2 doesn't happen to you. You have to choose to act on it.
And they contrast just daily planning, which can keep you stuck in urgency.
Yeah, because the view is too narrow. They advocate for weekly organizing instead.
Why weekly?
It gives you a broader context. You see the bigger picture, the mountains for the week. It's less about a rigid schedule, more a flexible framework based on your core priorities, putting the big rocks in first,
Got it. But life happens, right?
Yeah,
Even with a great weekly plan, urgent stuff comes up. How do you stay principle-centered then in the moment?
that pause, that space between stimulus and response, that's your freedom. The freedom to choose your response based on principles and conscience instead of just reacting on autopilot.
And listening to that first whispering of conscience, as they put it.
Yeah, that initial nudge. But it's easy to rationalize it away, isn't it? If you don't listen immediately, you start justifying why you can't or shouldn't.
Like the example with the teenager in the video game. The parent gets that nudge, connect with your kid, but it feels awkward, inconvenient.
So they rationalize, he's fine, I'm tired, teenager's right. And you avoid the immediate discomfort, sure, but the long-term cost in the relationship grows. Rationalization builds walls. Integrity means acting on the whisper, even when it's tough.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. How do these ideas apply when we're dealing with other people? Leading, relating, especially with how work is changing.
Well, the sources definitely touch on that shift to the knowledge worker age. And yeah, the decline of older industrial age jobs. They frame it less as just, politics or trade deals, though that's part of the noise, and more as a fundamental economic shift. It demands a new way of thinking, new skills.
New tool set.
Right. And they point out that old management styles, treating people like cogs in a machine, that created this kind of downward spiral of codependency.
Where people just wait to be told what to do and blame the boss if things go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Leadership becomes just a title, a position. But these sources define leadership very differently.
How so?
It's about communicating someone's worth and potential so clearly, so powerfully, that they start to see it in themselves. It's about igniting that process of seeing, doing, becoming. It's influence earned through character, not just rank.
That's a powerful way to put it. It means anyone can lead, right? By building trust and helping others grow. And speaking of trust, there was that point about loyalty.
Ah, yes. Being loyal to those not present, they call it one of the highest tests of character.
It's so easy, isn't it, when someone's not there and the criticism starts to just join in or stay quiet?
But choosing, even quietly, to defend them or offer a different perspective, my experience was different. Or maybe we should talk to them directly. That speaks volumes about your integrity. Everyone else in the room learns they can trust you won't badmouth them behind their backs.
It builds trust instantly. Another big relationship piece they cover is forgiveness.
That Dag Hammarskjöld quote is striking. Forgiveness breaks the chain of causality. He who forgives you takes upon himself the consequences. It implies sacrifice.
It's not just forgetting, it's absorbing some of the impact.
Yeah. And importantly, they stress focusing on forgiving others and seeking forgiveness for our own part, not just waiting for apologies. That analogy of the snake bite.
Right, chasing the snake only drives the venom deeper. Holding on to resentment hurts you the most.
Exactly. Like the manager who sought forgiveness from his boss, even though he felt unfairly treated. He focused on his part, broke the cycle, and restored the relationship.
So this all points towards interdependence, doesn't it? Which they say is where we spend, 80% of our time?
Yeah, most of our important results involve other people. And old-school time management, focused on the individual, just doesn't cut it here.
So how do you solve problems effectively in that interdependent reality?
Number 1, seek first to understand. Empathic listening. They mentioned the talking stick idea.
Where you have to restate the other person's point to their satisfaction before you can make yours.
Exactly. Sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It forces genuine listening. It shifts the energy from combat to collaboration. You're not fighting each other. You're looking at the problem together.
Like that manager caught between client demands and HQ limits.
Yeah. Once he truly understood his boss's pressures, the budget constraints, the strained relationships, the problem became a shared challenge, not just his problem.
And that understanding unlocked, what do they call it? Third alternative solutions.
Right. That's the synergy. 1 + 1 = 3 or more. It's not compromise where everyone loses something. It's finding a solution that's better than what either person could have thought of alone, because you've combined perspectives.
That story about the executives resolving that months-long conflict in half an hour just by listening empathically. That's amazing.
It shows how much energy gets wasted in misunderstanding and defensiveness. Empathy unlocks solutions, which underscores the need for shared vision and values, too.
Being on the same page, singing from the same song sheet.
But it has to be genuinely shared, right? Not just announced from the top. It comes from involving people, tapping into that collective conscience about what's important.
Which brings us to empowerment from the inside out.
Yeah. It's easy to feel powerless, especially in big organizations, and blame everything out there. But they say anytime we think the problem is out there, that thought is the problem.
Meaning our reaction, our mindset is where our power lies.
Exactly. Focus on your circle of influence. Act with integrity there. Create the conditions for growth, regardless of the wider system. You might not be the boss, but you can be a leader. Like that low-level manager who influenced his own boss just by living these principles.
Okay, so what are the conditions needed for that kind of empowerment to actually take root?
They list 5 key things. Trustworthiness is foundational.
Character and competence. Like the doctor example, good person, but can they do the surgery? You need both for trust in that situation.
Right. Then win-win agreements, which we should dig into. Then self-governance.
Giving people space and freedom to choose their methods.
Yeah. Within clear guidelines and desired results. That Tom Peters quote about people loving crummy jobs if they have autonomy, you are king. That freedom is key for ownership and creativity.
Okay. Then helping structures and systems.
This is crucial. Are the formal systems, goals, rewards, processes actually supporting the cooperation and responsibility you want? Or undermining it, like the father involving his kids in setting family rules, aligning the system.
That story about the 2 supervisors, the micromanager versus the empowering one, really highlighted the difference. One got compliance, the other got commitment and satisfaction.
Yeah, the empowering one enthroned the conscience by asking questions, trusting judgment. And that story about guiding the young people with the script, expressing faith, letting them lead, even with uncertainty, that's empowerment.
So let's drill down on those win-win stewardship agreements. You said they're a big departure from typical delegation.
They really are. It's not just handing off tasks, or worse, dumping. It's creating a true psychological partnership around achieving specific results. Much deeper buy-in.
Okay, so the 5 elements. First, desired results. Be specific.
Super specific, the what, measurable outcomes. From what, to what, by when. Everyone needs to know what winning looks like a scoreboard.
Got it. Second, guidelines.
These are the guardrails, the principles, the policies. Don't violate these core rules while you're achieving the results.
Third, resources. What support is available?
Yep. Financial, human, tech, organizational. And importantly, the leader is a resource too, available to help remove obstacles.
Fourth, accountability. Who checks the progress?
Primarily the person themselves. Self-evaluation against the desired results. They mention 360-degree feedback here too, given directly to the individual.
Which can be intense, humbling, they said.
Oh, definitely. It cuts through blind spots. But it has to be delivered supportively. It's about growth, not judgment.
And the fifth element, consequences.
What happens, good or bad, as a result? Some are natural market share goes up, relationships improve. Others are logical, agreed-upon consequences tied to performance. It's about facing reality.
So having these clear agreements, how does that help with, the daily chaos when unexpected stuff lands on your desk?
It gives you a framework, a reference point. Instead of just reacting, you can pause and relate the new demand back to the agreement. Okay, boss, we agreed on X, Y, and Z this week. This new thing is urgent. How does it fit? What should I shift?
So you're not just saying yes or no, you're having a strategic conversation. Maybe even turning a crisis into a chance to fix the underlying system.
Exactly. Those examples, the last-minute proposal, the shared secretary, the council meeting, it's about using the agreement to elevate the conversation. Find the quadrant 2 opportunity hidden in the quadrant 3 urgency. Maybe fix the process that caused the last-minute rush.
And in a culture built on this, if someone makes an honest mistake,
it's a learning opportunity, not the end of the world. If you want people to be self-governing and innovative, they need the freedom to sometimes get it wrong without fearing punishment.
it sounds like the kind of peace you get from living this way is deeper, different from just clearing your inbox.
Totally different. It's peace from balance, from developing yourself, from your roles working together, and fundamentally peace from living in alignment with your conscience and these principles.
Back to conscience again, connecting us to principles, guiding our choices in that space between stimulus and response.
And they argue the real turning point is deciding to live by that conscience, come what may. When you make that choice, time stops being the enemy. Because principle-based actions like planting seeds naturally yield positive results over time. The law of the farm. Time becomes your ally.
And they circle back to that deep desire we all have for meaning, for contribution.
Yeah, that inner longing for greatness. Acting on it might mean letting go of old habits, old excuses, comfort zones. It takes courage.
But it aligns you with something deeper, allows you to make your unique mark.
It's not about being perfect overnight. It's about the journey making and keeping promises, listening to conscience, building integrity step by step. That's where the real effectiveness and the peace comes from.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the big takeaway seems to be this shift, right? Moving away from just managing the clock, chasing quick fixes.
Towards navigating by a compass, focusing on timeless principles, listening to conscience, building integrity, and really mastering interdependence through understanding and win-win thinking.
It's a profound shift from just efficiency to genuine effectiveness, from merely managing time to truly leading yourself and influencing others through trust.
Especially now in this knowledge worker age, where collaboration and influence are so critical and old structures are creaking.
So a final thought for you, our listener, thinking about this shift and the challenges around us. Where in your own life, or maybe your work, do you feel the need to focus more on the compass rather than just the clock?
And maybe what's one small step guided by your conscience that you could take this week? Could be a commitment to yourself, or maybe trying to really understand someone else's perspective to build trust or find a win-win, just something to consider.